Now, a lot of you know in Diablo 2 Resurrected, really uniques and Runewords kind of reign supreme. They dominate almost every single slot that there is on a character. Now, just as some examples, we're talking about uniques, you know, things like the Harlequin's Crest, we got things like the Arachnid's Mesh, or maybe even something like the gloves. Mage Fists get used all the time. Now, for Runewords, my God, there's almost too many examples to even list. We'll just go over a couple. Obviously, Enigma, we got things like Infinity, we got stuff like the Spirit Shield, obviously. But even though these uniques and Runewords dominate most of the gear slots, in some instances, actually rare items are the absolute best thing you can have. Now, just super quick disclaimer, this isn't a list of every single rare item that could be the BIS on every single type of build. And also, these aren't going to be rare items that are for some super obscure way that there's like a couple hundred people on the planet that maybe play one particular playstyle. This is for the vast majority, 99% of people that do PVM. Now, the very first instance we're going to take a look at, this is actually at the boots. It is kind of a weak spot on most characters, so unique items, there's a few of them, and obviously you can't make Runewords for boots, so that's one reason that rare items can actually come out as the top option. And we're going to kind of talk about here, tri-res boots. Now, here's some great examples right here, and you notice they have 3 different resistances, but just having those 3 res usually don't make them good enough to be whether valuable or something you're actually going to want to use. It's going to want to roll with more stuff on it. Now, other examples of things you're going to look for are things like faster hit recovery, faster run walk. You can even get things like strength and dex on them. Now, these boots are pretty dang valuable because it's really hard to get 3 different resistances also to roll pretty high, because if you have like 3 to fire res, what's that really going to do for you? Also, to get the walk run, to get the hit recovery, to get all these different things to roll together, it's pretty dang rare. But if you do find yourself a pair of these, they can be the best in slot for several different builds. Next up is another spot that you can't make any Runewords for. Let me know if you notice a little bit of a trend in this video. But we're talking about the ring spot, and we're talking about faster cast rate rare rings. Casters are used way more often in Diablo 2 Resurrected than melee characters are, so we'll specifically look at these FCR rings. Once again, like the boots, just getting the one thing that the item is named after isn't going to be enough, because getting 10 FCR on a ring, while if you're in normal difficulty on a playthrough, is absolutely spectacular, later on, not going to be enough for it to go ahead and put on unless it's just a temporary space holder until you get something better. But for other things you really want to look for on these rings, you want things like life and mana, of course. Also, like the tri-res boots, you can also get resistances on these rings. And then also, we're going to be stealing once again from the boots. You're going to want to look for strength and dex as well. Even though you're a caster, you know, you're not bumping up these things to land more blows with the dex or deal more damage with the strength. If you don't have to put points into strength or dexterity in order to wear your gear that's extra hard points, you can go ahead and put into vitality or energy to help out your caster. Now, sliding into the third one, and these are pretty much going to be stuff actually not necessarily for the casters, but kind of directed more for the few different types of melee characters, even though they're almost kind of casters, which you'll kind of understand when I start explaining here. We're actually talking about rare gloves. There's that thing, once again, a slot that you cannot make Runewords for. And we're talking about rare gloves that are going to be for the Javazan. They're going to be for the Mosaic Assassin or for the Boazan. Now, generally, first off, what's going to be top priority on these is, of course, going to be the 2 to whichever one of those skills that I just named off you want to get. And then, of course, you're going to want to get the 20% increased attack speed. Now, that right off the top is just for starters, and they can be an all right pair to use with just that. But once again, you're going to be wanting to have more things roll on it, much similar to the rings and to the boots. You're going to want to look for things like strength and dex. You're going to want to look for some different resistances. A lot of times people prefer to get things like fire and lightning rather than poison or cold. But there is something different you kind of want to look for on these gloves that usually will be a little bit different than the rings and the boots. Now, because like I said, these are kind of melee characters, they're not really, because the Lightning Fury Javazan, you do almost all your damage with the lightning from the Lightning Fury. The Mosaic Assassin has all the skills coming out with all that different elemental damage. And now the Boazan, I guess if you are going multi-shot, that is a ton of physical damage coming from those. But you're also going to want to look for Life Leech, or what I kind of prefer to try to find on gloves is Mana Leech. Now, most of the time, if I'm using rare gloves on a build, it's going to be the ones for the Lightning Fury Javazan. It's one of the most powerful characters in the entire game. It's out of these 3, probably the only one that I actually use regularly. Now, it's not absolutely required, but it is very important, I feel anyways, to get Mana Leech at least somewhere on that Lightning Fury Javazan, even if it's just a little bit. That way, when your javelin throws out and pierces all those cows, usually where I'm using it, you'll leech back some mana because the Lightning Fury Javazan absolutely eats through mana. So getting it at least somewhere on your build is great, and if you can get it to roll right along with the gloves you definitely want to use either way, that is just absolutely primo. Now we're going to move into a couple here that are actually in spots where you can use Runewords, but you can definitely make the argument for rare items to be the best in slot for these spots. Now the first one up we're going to talk about here is actually for the Tornado Druid, and that is the 5 NATO Pelt. Now I'll be honest, I don't really use these a lot because in order to get one that actually rolls really good as well, it is incredibly difficult, and if you're looking to trade for them online, incredibly expensive. Now the unique counterpart to this would be probably Jalal's Mane, and for how easily obtainable this particular item is, Jalal's Mane still an absolutely great choice, but if I really had to choose a perfectly rolled 6 NATO or Jalal's, I would say 6 NATO would beat it out. Now Jalal's Mane does have just a 2 to Druid skills, it does have a bunch of strength and a bunch of all resistances, very great to get on your character, but it kind of does lack a little bit as going towards the damage for the build, kind of because it has the 2 to shapeshifting skills instead of, if those were 2 to elemental skills, it would be way better off for a lot of these druid casters. But looking at these examples of these 5 NATO pelts right here, you can see how you can get so much more damage out of these with more plus skills going to the actual skill that you are going to be using all the time. So we'll shout out a lot of the similar stuff on a lot of these rare things here. You're going to want to get the different resistances, usually the fire and lightning once again, and then of course any other the plus skills that can go ahead and help you out, whether you get cyclone armor, you could get summon grizzly points on there, or a few different other things that may be less desirable but still could help out your build. I found a few of these 5 NATO pelts in the past, none of them rolled particularly spectacular, but I'm hoping one day to get one to roll almost perfect for me. Now next up is another rare item that quite often you use like Runewords over it just because the Runewords are so much easier to get. But if you can get the rare items, your character turns into a god. And this rare item is actually Rare Claws for the Assassin. Now these are actually ones that are even more rare in my experience anyways to find than the actual 5 NATO pelts. Now what you're usually looking for on these claws is obviously the assassin skills, but then you also want to hope to get 3 to Lightning Sentry. These extra skills boost up your damage a ton when you're using that Lightning Trap Assassin. Now there is a Fire Trap Assassin that nowadays can actually work with new rebalancing things and Sunder Charms being out, but the Fire Trap Assassin is used way less than the Lightning Trap Assassin. Now of course you would want to get other skills, perhaps you get points to Death Sentry, and maybe there's some kind of like ancillary skills, you want to get Weapons Block, or maybe get point over to Fade so you can go ahead and use that occasionally. These other skills definitely can be helpful, but mainly getting that overall 5 to Lightning Trap Assassin is the most crucial. Now one other thing is absolutely key to kind of get on these, and that is getting the increased attack speed. Unlike casters, like literal casters, you need the FCR to go ahead and get your spells out faster. With the Trap Assassin, you actually throw the traps down based upon your increased attack speed. So getting that 40% IAS really takes these claws to another level. Now getting all of these different things to roll together is incredibly difficult. That's what makes them incredibly rare, but online trading also incredibly valuable. Let me know if you found any crazy godly versions of these rare items, and make sure you check out this video right here. I know you're gonna like it. Peace out, fellas, and keep slaying.